Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Dread Time Stories. I'm your host, Dr. Phobia. And tonight, dear patients, our story comes from the world of creepypastas. So sit back, relax, and enjoy tonight's tale, Basement Room. Years ago, my family went on a vacation in Cape Cod, and we rented a small old house to stay in for 2 weeks. On the main floor was the kitchen, the living room, and the bathroom. All the bedrooms were on the second floor. There was a basement downstairs with a washer, dryer, sofa, and a television. On the first night we were there, we were awakened by a terrible scream from my sister's bedroom. When my dad burst into the room and turned on the light, he found her sitting up in bed, screaming and crying. My parents sat with her and comforted her until she finally calmed down enough to tell them what had scared her. She said that she had been awakened in the middle of the night by a horrible stench, and when she opened her eyes, she had seen the entire bedroom soaked in blood from top to bottom. There was blood all over the floor, bloody handprints on the walls, and blood splatters all over the ceiling. We all thought that she had just been having a nightmare, but she refused to go back into her bedroom and stayed in our parents' room for the remainder of the trip. One evening, my mother was cooking in the kitchen upstairs, and my father had gone out to run an errand in the nearby town. My sister and I were sitting in the basement room watching TV, when all of a sudden the light bulb popped and the TV went off, leaving us in complete darkness. The basement was unfinished and had old stone walls, making it a bit of a creepy place. For a few seconds we just froze, not knowing what to do. Then we started to smell something horrible. It was a terrible stench, and when it hit our noses, we felt nauseous. It smelled like rotting flesh. The smell quickly grew worse and worse, and then we heard a scratching sound in the darkness. Something seemed to be scratching on the floor or the walls. We screamed and began scrambling around in the pitch black, trying to find the door. Eventually, we managed to open the door and rush upstairs, screaming for our mother. We kept telling her about the disgusting smell, and we heard something scratching and scraping around down there. My mother eventually agreed to go down into the basement, replace the bulb, and check out the source of the horrible smell. She took a flashlight and a new bulb and disappeared into the darkened basement. As we waited for her at the top of the stairs, we expected her to return quickly, but it seemed like she was down there for an eternity. Suddenly, we saw her emerge out of the darkness and come running up the stairs. She slammed the basement door behind her and bolted it as fast as she could. She turned to us, and I could see her face had completely drained of color. Her eyes were wide with fear, and she went to the kitchen and called the police. We overheard the conversation on the phone and managed to figure out that she had seen someone down there in the basement. As we waited for the police to come, we huddled together in the living room, staring at the basement door. At any moment, we expected to hear someone banging or trying to break it down. My mother refused to tell us what she had seen. When the police arrived, my mother greeted them at the door and ushered them inside. She unbolted the basement door and they went down into the darkness with their flashlights out and guns drawn. They searched the entire basement, but found nothing. There was no other way out of the basement. No windows, no doors. Whatever was down there would have had to come up through the basement door. My mother finally revealed what she had seen down there in the pitch black basement. As she spoke, she became very still and quiet. She said that she had been changing the light bulb downstairs when she began to smell the horrible stench we had described. She then started to hear a faint scratching sound. She shone her flashlight around the room and finally caught the sight of something crouched between the washer and the dryer. It was a man, crouched on all fours. His clothes were tattered and his hair hung wild and tangled. His face didn't even look human. It was a twisted expression of pure hatred. In that split second, he looked at my mother, and his eyes reflected the beam of her flashlight. Then suddenly he crawled on all fours and disappeared into the wall. When my mother saw him simply vanish into thin air, she dropped the flashlight and ran. After that, none of us would go into the basement. We kept the door locked and bolted. Every night we slept in our parents' room, and we locked that door too. We cut our vacation short a few days later and just drove home. Well, dear patients, that was Basement Room. I hope you enjoyed it, and thank you for listening. Like I always say in closing, check under your bed, look in your closet, and sleep with the light on. The life you save may very well be your own. Good night, everyone.